The night my son was born, I heard him cry. I was exhausted, 23 hours of labor, my body a battlefield, my husband Miguel asleep in the chair beside the bed because I had told him to rest, because I was already trying to be the kind of mother who sacrificed. But I heard the cry. It was thin but fierce, the sound of a creature who had fought to arrive and was announcing his presence. Then the nurses took him to clean him, to weigh him, to do whatever they do in those first minutes that feel like centuries. I closed my eyes, just for a moment, just to gather the strength to meet him properly. When I woke, it was 3 a.m. The room was dark except for the monitor lights. And standing beside my bed was Carmen, my mother-in-law, the head nurse of the maternity ward, still in her scrubs, her face a mask I would spend the next 18 years trying to forget. "Elena," she said, her voice was soft. Too soft. The voice of a woman who had delivered bad news so many times she had perfected the tone. "I'm so sorry. The baby stopped breathing. SIDS, we tried everything. I'm so sorry. I didn't understand. I had heard him cry. He had been alive. He had been here. I want to see him," I said. My voice didn't sound like mine. It sounded like a door creaking open in an empty house. "No," Carmen said, firm but gentle. "The way you stop a child from touching a stove. You don't want that memory, Elena. He's gone. Let me protect you from that. I've already arranged everything. A cremation. Quick, dignified. You need to rest. You need to heal." Miguel woke up then. He looked at his mother, then at me, and he understood before I did. He made a sound I have never heard another human make. A howl compressed into a single breath. I didn't see my son. I didn't hold him. I didn't count his fingers or kiss his forehead or whisper his name. The name we had chosen, Gabriel, after Miguel's grandfather who had crossed an ocean to give his family a future. Carmen handled everything. The death certificate, signed by a colleague. The cremation, arranged through a funeral home she knew. The ashes, scattered in a garden at the hospital, she said was peaceful. There was no funeral. She said it would be too painful for me, for Miguel, for the family. She said grief was private. She said we should mourn in silence, the way strong people do. I wrote letters instead, to Gabriel, to the baby who had cried once and then disappeared into the machinery of my mother-in-law's efficiency. I wrote him on his first birthday, his second, his fifth. I wrote him when Miguel died 3 years later, a car accident, driving drunk for the first time in his life, the bottle of tequila found on the passenger seat, the note in his pocket that said only I couldn't save him. I wrote Gabriel that I was sorry, that I should have insisted on seeing him, that I should have held him, even if he was dead, even if it would have broken me, because at least I would have had something to break. I wrote that I was living in a body that had been a mother for exactly 23 hours, and then never again. I was 4 to 5 when I learned that my body had been a mother all along. Welcome to Little Bunny Stories. If you're here, maybe you know what it means to grieve someone you never got to bury. Maybe you know the particular horror of being told a truth so gently that you don't realize it's a lie until the years have already been stolen. If this is your first time, hit that subscribe button. We tell stories here about mothers who find their children in impossible places, and about the women who refuse to let grief be the end of their story. Here's my story. Here's my story. I had been volunteering at the Westside Public Library for 6 years. It was the only place I could be around children without falling apart. The quiet of the stacks, the rustle of pages, the way teenagers hunched over homework with the intensity of people trying to build futures. I taught a literature circle for high schoolers, mostly because Mrs. Gable, the head librarian, had asked me to fill in 1 week, and I had never found the courage to stop. I was good at it. I knew books. I knew how to ask questions that made kids think instead of perform, and I knew how to listen, really listen, which is a skill you learn when you've spent 18 years talking to someone who isn't there. He came in on a Tuesday in October. The air was starting to turn, that particular autumn crispness that makes everything feel temporary. He was 17, tall, with his father's shoulders and his grandmother's dark eyes. He asked for help finding sources for an essay on 100 years of solitude. Solitude is a big theme, I said, walking him to the fiction section. Are you writing about isolation or about the way families repeat their patterns? Patterns, he said, the way the Buendia family keeps making the same mistakes, like they can't escape their own story. I looked at him then, really looked, and I saw it, the small, crescent-shaped birthmark on the left side of his neck. A moon. Just below the jawline, I knew that moon. I had seen it on the ultrasound. The technician had pointed it out, laughing, saying, "Look, he's got a little moon, must be a night owl." Miguel and I had joked about it for months. Our lunar boy, our moon child. I reached for the shelf to steady myself. My hand found the spine of Garcia Marquez and held on like it was a railing. Are you okay? The boy asked. Yes, I lied. Just the birthmark on your neck. It's distinctive. He touched it, self-conscious. Yeah, weird, right? My grandmother, my mom, she raised me. It's complicated. She always said it was a kiss from an angel. Before I was born. Before you were born, I repeated. The words tasted like metal. I'm Tamaz, he said. I go to Lincoln High. Elena, I said. I'm Elena. I helped him find the books. I don't remember what I said. I watched him leave, the moon on his neck disappearing under his collar, and I stood in the fiction aisle until Mrs. Gable found me and asked if I was having a stroke. I went home. I pulled out the box I kept in the back of my closet, the box of Gabriel, the ultrasound photos, the hospital bracelet I had kept, though I never knew why. The letters, bundled by year, addressed to my Gabriel, my moon, my missing piece. I looked at the ultrasound. The moon was there, a shadow on the screen, a crescent in the grainy black and white. Then I opened my laptop. I did something I had never done in 18 years. I searched for Carmen Vance. Carmen had retired 5 years ago. She lived in the same house where Miguel had grown up, the house where I had been a daughter-in-law before I became a widow. She had never remarried. She had never adopted officially, though I remembered her saying once that she had taken in a troubled boy through a private arrangement, when I was still too deep in grief to ask questions. I found Tamaz's social media. His profile was public, typical teenager, careless with his privacy. I scrolled through photos. I saw him at 15, at 16, at 12. I saw him with Carmen at a birthday party. I saw him in a crib in a photo dated December 2006, 3 months after Gabriel died. I saw the dates. I did the math. I felt the world tilt. Then I searched public records. Birth certificates. Carmen had never had a biological child. She had been married briefly in her 20s, divorced, childless. But in March 2007, a birth certificate was filed for Tamaz Vance. Father, unknown. Mother, Carmen Vance. The attending physician was a Dr. Herbert Reeves, who had worked at the same hospital where Gabriel was born. Dr. Reeves had died in 2015. His obituary mentioned his long career in obstetrics and his commitment to private adoptions. Private adoptions. I searched the hospital records. The death certificate for Gabriel Vance, signed by a Dr. L. Kowalski, who had left the state in 2008 and whose license had been quietly surrendered for personal reasons. There was no autopsy report, no coroner signature, just a death certificate and a cremation authorization signed by Carmen herself as next of kin. She had signed it. She had arranged it. She had scattered ashes that didn't exist in a garden that was probably just a story. And then she had taken my baby home. I sat with this knowledge for 3 days. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I just sat in my apartment, the small one-bedroom I had moved to after Miguel died, after I couldn't bear the house where we had planned Gabriel's nursery, and I let the truth settle into my bones like a cold. Carmen had stolen my son. She had told me he was dead, and she had raised him as her own. She had let me grieve for 18 years. She had let Miguel drink himself into a grave of guilt. She had built a life on the corpse of my motherhood, and she had called it love. I could have gone to the police. I thought about it. Kidnapping, fraud, medical malpractice. But Tamaz was 17. In 6 months, he would be 18. And what would the police do? Arrest his grandmother, the only mother he had ever known, and throw him into a foster system he was too old for? Destroy his senior year, his college applications, his sense of reality with a single phone call? No, I had lost 18 years. I would not lose him to the machinery of vengeance. I had a better plan. I would know him. I would let him know me. And when the time was right, I would give him the truth, not as a weapon, but as a gift. I went back to the library the next Tuesday. I was there when Tamaz arrived, carrying the same backpack with the same patch from a robotics competition. Hi Tamaz, I said. How's the essay? He smiled. He had Miguel's smile, wide, slightly crooked, the kind of smile that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. It's getting there. Can I ask you something? Anything. Why do you volunteer here? You seem like you could be doing something else, something more. I don't know. Important? I looked at him. At the moon on his neck. At the boy who had been stolen from me and who had no idea that the woman helping him find books was the one who had chosen his name. Because stories matter, I said. Because sometimes the right book at the right time can save a life. And because I believe everyone deserves a place where they're seen. He nodded, serious in the way that intelligent teenagers are. I like that. My Carmen, she raised me. She says I read too much. that books are escapes, not solutions. Escapes are solutions, I said. Sometimes the only way to survive a story is to find a different one. He started coming every Tuesday, then Thursdays too. We talked about books, Garcia Marquez of course, but also Baldwin, Morrison, the Brontes. He was hungry for stories about families that were broken and rebuilt, about identities that shifted, about love that survived lies. I didn't push. I just listened. I just gave him the books he needed and watched him grow. He told me about Carmen. He called her my mom, but there was hesitation there, a gap between the word and the feeling. He told me she was protective, controlling, that she had never let him spend the night at friends' houses, that she had chosen his schools, his activities, his clothes, that she had a lock on his bedroom door for safety, but he had never felt unsafe anywhere except with her. She lies, he said once, casually, flipping through a copy of The Stranger. Not big lies, small ones, about my birth father. About why we moved twice when I was little. About why there are no baby pictures of me before I was 3. I kept my hands steady. What do you think she's hiding? I don't know, he said. But sometimes I feel like I'm living in someone else's story, like the facts don't quite add up, but I'm the only one who notices. I looked at him, at my son, at the boy who had been raised by a thief but who had still developed the instinct for truth. Sometimes, I said carefully, the only way to find your own story is to start asking the questions that scare the people who wrote the old one. He looked up. His eyes, Miguel's eyes, my eyes, met mine. Did you ever have to do that, ask scary questions? Every day, I said. For 18 years. The graduation party was in June. Carmen had rented the community center, decorated it with blue and white balloons, hired a caterer. She stood at the entrance receiving guests like a queen, her silver hair perfectly styled, her smile the same one she had used when she told me my baby was dead. I arrived at 4 p.m. I wore a navy dress I had bought for the occasion, modest, professional, the kind of thing that made me look like a librarian rather than a woman carrying a nuclear secret in her purse. Tomás saw me immediately. His face lit up. Alina, you came. Of course I came, I said. I wouldn't miss this. He hugged me. He had grown taller in the year I had known him. He smelled like soap and books and the particular optimism of a boy on the edge of adulthood. He introduced me to his friends, his teachers, the robotics team he captained. This is Alina, he said. She's the reason I got into Columbia. She wrote my recommendation. She basically taught me everything I know about literature. Carmen watched from across the room. I felt her gaze before I saw it, a weight, a pressure, the familiar sensation of being measured and found wanting. She walked over, her smile still intact but her eyes sharp as scalpels. Alina, she said, I don't think we've met. I'm Carmen, Tomás's mother. I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had destroyed my life with a single sentence in a dark hospital room. She was older, softer, but the eyes were the same, the eyes of a woman who had decided long ago that her needs outweighed everyone else's. We haven't met, I said. But I feel like I know you. Tomás talks about you often. All good things, I hope, she said, her voice carrying the warning of a mother claiming territory. Always, I said. And I smiled. It was the smile I had practiced for a year, warm, neutral, the smile of a woman who had learned to hide hurricanes behind her teeth. The party continued. Speeches were made. Tomás was toasted. Carmen gave a speech about the miracle of motherhood and the child I never thought I'd have, and the room applauded while I stood in the back and counted my breaths. When the cake was cut, Tomás found me. He looked nervous, younger than his years. Alina, he said, I wanted to thank you for everything. For the books, the talks, the recommendation. You saw me when a lot of people didn't. I see you, I said. I've always seen you. I have something for you, he said. He pulled out a small book, a first edition of 100 Years of Solitude, worn but intact. I found it at a used bookstore. I know you love Garcia Marquez. I wanted you to have it. I took the book. I held it to my chest. Thank you, Tomás. I have something for you too, I said, a graduation gift. It's in my car. Will you walk with me? We stepped outside. The evening air was warm, full of the scent of jasmine from the bushes near the parking lot. I opened the trunk of my car and pulled out a white box. It was plain, unmarked, tied with a ribbon the color of the moon. I think you should open this here, I said. Not inside, just you and me. He took the box. He looked at me, questions forming in his eyes. Then he sat on the bench near the entrance and he opened it. Inside, arranged with the care of a woman who had spent 18 years preparing, were the documents. The ultrasound photo with the moon circled in red ink. The hospital bracelet, Baby Boy Vance, October 14, 2006. The letter I had written the night Gabriel died, the paper yellowed with age, my handwriting frantic with grief. A photograph of Miguel, young and smiling, the man who had died of guilt because he couldn't save a son who wasn't dead. And the birth certificate, the original, filed in 2006 for Gabriel Vance. Father, Miguel Vance. Mother, Elena Vance. Tomás looked at each item. He didn't speak. He touched the ultrasound photo with a trembling finger. He read the letter. He held the birth certificate up to the light. The birthmark, he said finally. His voice was barely audible. The moon, it's in the ultrasound. Yes, I said. And this man, he pointed to Miguel's photo, he looks like me. The eyes, yes, I said again. He looked up at me. And I saw the moment he understood. Not all of it, the understanding would take years, would require therapy and tears and the slow rebuilding of a story he had never written. But he understood enough. You're not just my librarian, he said. No, I said, I'm not. She lied, he said. Not a question. A statement of fact landing with the weight of a falling tree. Yes, he stood up. He walked to the bushes and he vomited. Not dramatically, quietly. The way you expel a poison you've been carrying without knowing it. I waited, I didn't touch him. I knew that touch right now would be too much. When he came back, his face was pale but his eyes were clear. What do I do? Whatever you want, I said. You can call the police, you can confront her, you can walk away and never look back, you can do nothing. You are 18 in 6 months, you are legally free, and I am not here to take anything from you. I am here to give you what she took. The truth, your name, your father, your story. He looked at the box, at the moon on the ultrasound, at the letter I had written to a baby who was never dead. My name, he said slowly. Is it Gabriel? It was, I said. It can be again, or it can be Tomás, or it can be both. That is your choice. It always should have been. He sat back down. He held the box in his lap like a shield. I need time, he said. Take all you need, I said. I waited 18 years. I can wait more. He didn't call the police. He didn't make a scene. He went back inside and he found Carmen, and he asked her quietly, in the corner of the community center while the party continued around them, is it true? I watched from the doorway. I watched her face collapse. I watched her try to deny it, to explain, to rewrite the story one more time. But Tomás was holding the birth certificate. He was holding the ultrasound. He was holding the letter I had written in blood and ink. And there was no arguing with paper. She broke down. She wept. She reached for him and he stepped back, not cruelly, just finally. The way you step back from a ledge you realize you've been standing on for too long. He left the party. He didn't come to me. He walked to the bus stop and he disappeared into the city, carrying the box, carrying the moon, carrying himself for the first time. I didn't follow. I had given him the only thing I had to give. The rest was his. 3 months later, he came to the library. He looked different, older, he had cut his hair. He was wearing a jacket I didn't recognize. Hi, Elena, he said. Hi, Gabriel, I replied, then catching myself or Tomás, whichever you prefer. Both, he said, for now. I'm thinking of going by Gabriel Tomás or Tomás Gabriel. I haven't decided. Either is beautiful, I said. He sat down across from me. He pulled out a college acceptance letter, Columbia, deferred to spring admission. He had asked for a gap semester, to think, to process, to become whoever he was going to be. I talked to Carmen, he said, once. She wants to see me. She says she can explain. She says she did it because she loved me. Because she couldn't have children and she saw a chance to be a mother. And what did you say? I told her that love doesn't steal. It doesn't lie. It doesn't let another woman write letters to a dead baby for 18 years. He looked at his hands. I told her I forgive her, but I can't see her. Not yet, maybe not ever. That was generous, I said. It wasn't generous, he said. It was survival. If I hate her, I have to think about her every day. I don't want to give her that. He looked up at me. I looked up my father, Miguel. I found the news article about the accident, the note in his pocket. I couldn't save him. He thought I was dead. He died thinking he failed. Yes, I said. The word was a stone in my throat. And you, Gabriel Tomás said, you lost everything. Him, me, your motherhood, and you still came back to give me the truth instead of taking revenge. I didn't want revenge, I said. I wanted you to have a choice. That's what she took. The choice to know me, the choice to know your father, the choice to be whoever you wanted to be. He reached across the table. He took my hand. His fingers were long like Miguel's, warm like mine. Can I call you Elena? He asked. For now, I know you're my mother, but I don't know what that word means yet. Not with you, not with her. Can we just be Elena and Gabriel for a while? Yes, I said. The tears came then, finally, after 18 years of drought. We can be Elena and Gabriel. We can be whatever you need. He came to dinner that night, and the next week, and the week after, not every day. Not with the pressure of a reunion that had to make up for lost time. Just, gradually, the way you learn a new language. The way you enter a house that has been empty and make it a home. He asked about Miguel. I told him stories, the good ones, the bad ones, the ordinary ones. I told him about the ultrasound, about the moon, about the way his father had cried when he heard the heartbeat. I gave him the letters I had written, all of them, bound in a book I had made myself. He read them slowly, one a week, as if digesting a life he had almost missed. He never called me Mom, not in the first year, not in the second, but on my 50th birthday he gave me a card. Inside he had written, to Alina who waited, "Thank you for seeing me before I knew I was lost." It was enough. It was more than enough. I opened La Casa de la Luna 3 years later. It is a small house, 3 bedrooms, a kitchen, a garden in the neighborhood where I raised Gabriel for those 23 hours before he was taken. We serve mothers who have lost babies in hospitals under suspicious circumstances. We help them request records, file complaints, find legal support. We listen to their stories without telling them to move on or be strong. We believe them. We see them. Gabriel helped paint the walls. He chose the color, a soft yellow, like the light in the ultrasound room where I first saw his moon. He volunteers there on weekends, talking to the teenagers who come with their mothers, offering the perspective of someone who was lost and found. Carmen is still alive. She lives in a facility now, alone, the house sold to pay legal fees from a lawsuit she filed and lost, not from me, but from a former colleague who discovered she had falsified another death certificate in 2011. There were others. Not many, but enough. I don't visit her. I don't hate her. I simply don't think about her. My energy is reserved for the women who come to La Casa de la Luna with empty arms and broken hearts, and for the young man who calls me Alina but who is learning slowly that motherhood is not a title you claim. It is a presence you offer. I am Alina Vance. I am 4 to 5 years old, though I feel older and younger than that, depending on the day. I am a mother who was told her child was dead, and who discovered that death was just another word for stolen. I am a widow who lost her husband to grief and who found him again in the eyes of his son. And I am here to tell you, if you have been told a story that doesn't feel true, trust your body. Trust the ache that won't go away. Trust the instinct that says something is wrong here, even when everyone around you insists you are crazy. The truth is not always gentle, but it is always yours. And the child you lost may not be lost at all. They may just be waiting, on the other side of a lie, for you to find them. See you in the next story.